Hi everyone, I'm CaliKim. Welcome to my garden. I have been waiting for this day for so long. Today I'm going to plant my fig tree, which is now growing in a container, but I'm going to plant it in a small space out in my garden using the Espalier method. Now you might be wondering, what is the Espalier method? No problem, I'm going to cover that in this video and also why I chose this method. First off, I got to tell you a little backstory on the fig tree. Patricia, our viewer, sent it to us as a cutting from her garden. It's pretty cool. Now I'm growing it in my garden. So if you have a friend with a fig tree, ask them if you can have a cutting. They're very easy to grow. When Patricia sent it to me as a little cutting, I rooted it and actually grew it indoors in a 1-gallon smart pot for about 3 years. Finally got around to planting it last spring in this 20-gallon smart pot, and it took right off. It grew tall, and now it's taller than I am. It's probably about 7 feet. So the first thing you need to know about fig trees is not only can they propagate very easily if you get a cutting from a friend, but they get big and they grow very, very quickly. So it's one of the problems I have. Because they can grow 20 feet tall and 10 or 15 feet wide, I really don't have room for it in my garden. So in comes the Espalier method. Now, the Espalier method is a method of growing trees flat against a wall, a fence, or a trellis. And then you can shape it in the direction that you want, usually on horizontal supports. Now, why did I choose the Espalier method? Because I don't have room for a fig tree. It's a great way to grow a lot of fruit in a little bit of space, where sunlight penetration comes through to the plant, where air circulation, it'll fit perfectly in the space that I have set aside for it. Here's the spot I chose for my fig tree. I'm very excited to plant it here, and let me tell you why. We just finished this section of the deck, and I needed something to plant here in this spot, and I figured it was a perfect spot to espalier the fig tree up against the deck. Now, fig trees need about 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. They love warm temperatures, and while this spot here does not get a full 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, it's the best spot I have, so sometimes you just got to work with what you have. And even if it doesn't get as much sun as it should, I'm still going to get figs, although maybe not as many as if it was planted in a sunnier location. Fig trees are a subtropical tree, and they grow very well here in our climate here in Southern California. They really do best in temperatures between 70 and 90 degrees. They can be very heat tolerant as long as they're watered enough. However, certain varieties can take very cold temperatures down to 10 to 15 degrees. So if you live in one of those areas, look for a variety that's very cold hardy. Now, unfortunately, we're unsure of what variety this one is, but that'll be the fun of it. If you live in a colder climate, zone 5 and below, you can still grow fig trees. However, you will need to provide it with some extra protection in the winter, such as super heavy mulch, or wrap the tree in burlap. It will go dormant in the wintertime, or a great option is to grow it in a container, like I did to start with. Grow it outside in the summertime when it's nice and warm, and then move it to a more protected location, such as your garage or indoors to your house during the wintertime. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure your bell notifications are set to all so you don't miss any videos. Next, I prepared the planting area by marking the spot I want to plant the tree, dug a hole a little bit wider than the root ball, and for this I used a power planter auger, which is a whole lot easier than using a shovel and really makes quick work of it. It's really important that you add some good organic fertilizer to your planting hole, because we want this tree to take off right away and have really good root development. So what I'm going to do is add a couple of handfuls, generous handfuls, of my homemade compost into the planting hole. It smells nice and earthy, and you want to use organic compost and organic granular fertilizer, because these fertilizers are time released, which basically means the microbes need to be activated in order for the nutrients to be released to the plant. We're going to activate them in just a moment with some good water-soluble fertilizer as we water in the tree. So we've got compost, a good organic granular fertilizer, and I also put in worm castings. And the reason why I always add worm castings to my planting hole is because they have a natural growth hormone. And we definitely want these roots to grow. So the worm castings will really help with that. So we've got a good little mixture there in the planting hole. And now it's time to plant our tree. The most exciting part. Check out my seed shop at CaliKimGardenandHome.com. Right now, Labor Day sale, 50% off all seed collections with the code TOMATO. Now, this plant's been growing in this 20-gallon smart pot for about 6 months. And this is exactly why I love growing in smart pots. We actually decided to cut the smart pot off. We'll repurpose that. But the roots are not root bound or circling around at all. You can see what a beautiful root mass it has. Nice and fibrous roots. It's going to take hold right away here in the ground. So I'm going to lift it up by the trunk. Got my good compost, all my good time release fertilizers in there, which is going to feed my plant over the next couple of months. Ooh, it's heavy. Hopefully I dug the hole big enough. See if it's going to fit in there. But first, you know what I need to do is just kind of fan the roots apart just a little bit. Just kind of loosen it up on the bottom so the roots can take hold. You don't need to go really crazy with that, especially growing in smart pots. They're nice and loose already. Now I'm putting the lateral branch that's going out this way facing this direction behind me. This branch will probably come off, so I'm not going to worry too much about where that goes. It's the perfect fit here. And I'm planting the fig tree flush with soil level. Try and get in here as straight as possible. I think we need to turn it just a little bit so this leader, we can train it easier against the side support. So much fun to have this in its new home. Now I'm going to backfill my fig tree with some of the soil that we removed when we dug the hole. I have my fig tree backfilled, and what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of tamping it down so all the soil fills in the extra spaces in the hole. And I'm going to add a couple extra handfuls of compost just to give it that little more extra nutrient boost, because I really want this fig tree taken off, getting off to a great start. Plus compost acts as mulch on top of the soil here and helps keep the moisture in. But we're not done yet. Now we need to add in some water-soluble fertilizer, which is immediately available to the plant. Now here I'm using my favorite plant cocktail. I'm going to use the Fish and Guano Fertilizer by Monterey. Now this stuff works so good. It's fish fertilizer, but it has the extra added ingredient of seabird guano, which is basically seabird excrement or poop, all in this nice, neat little package. So it's a high percentage of nitrogen. It's a 9 in nitrogen, but it also has other great organic nutrients such as phosphorus and potassium. As you can see on the bottle here, it's a 962, 9% nitrogen, 6% phosphorus, and 2% potassium. So this is really going to help my plant take off with some good green leafy growth, as well as providing it with a lot of other essential nutrients that are critical to its growth. And I'm also going to add in some of the Vermicera worm tea. Now, this again has a natural root hormone. We all know how great earthworm castings are for our plants, and this is earthworm castings in water-soluble form. Has great beneficial bacteria and microbes, which are going to help my plant get off to a really good start, help it be nice and healthy, and avoid transplant shock. Now we're going to give it a nice soil drench. This is about a 2-gallon watering can. This plant was pretty dry, so it's really going to need it. Just soak it down into the roots of the plant. Now not only are these nutrients immediately available to my fig tree here, but watering in the time release fertilizers like the compost, the organic fertilizer, and the worm castings will also help the microbes activate so they can consume the time release fertilizers and make them available to the plant. So I'm just going to water, let it soak in. It's okay here if you water around the root zone. You definitely want to do that so all the soil around the plant gets nice and soaked. All the time release fertilizers get activated, and those roots start to take hold and get established in their new home here. Not only can you do a soil drench with the Fish and Guano Fertilizer and the worm casting tea, but you can also do a foliar feeding. So just let some drip over the leaves of the plants, where it can be immediately uptake by the plant and help it avoid transplant shock. Let's talk now about the support structure I'm using to espalier my fig trees. You need a very sturdy structure for this because figs get loaded down, gets very heavy. It's very important that you don't skimp here. And I got this idea from Millennial Gardener. He's got great fig trees in his garden, and this is the method he used. So first off, we start off with 2 sturdy T-posts. I chose to space them 9 feet apart with the fig tree right in the middle at about 4.5 feet. But the distance you're spacing them apart will really depend on the space that you have. But I'd say at least 3 feet on either side. We may need to add additional supports later as the fig tree grows. So we've got these 5-foot T-posts driven into the ground all the way up to the T. Nice and sturdy. You don't want them going anywhere. This thing is not moving. So the next thing we did is we drilled holes 15 inches up from the very bottom of the T-post. And because these are super sturdy, heavy-duty T-posts, we did have to use a metal drill bit for that. So 15 inches up for the first hole, another 15 inches up for the second hole. Then we have the option, a little bit more space here, to add a third level to my espalier if we need to as it grows. So basically, these will form the different levels that our fig tree will be attached to as the branches grow horizontally. We'll train them to do that. The next thing that we did is we installed some eye hooks. These are very sturdy eye hooks. They're a 1/4 inch thread, and threaded them through the T-post. We've got a nut on one side and a nut and a washer on the back side to hold them in place. Now the cool thing about this is we repurposed as many materials as we could. Already had the T-post. I actually spray painted them black to make them look a little prettier. Already had the spray paint, so didn't have to spend money on that. Now the next very important item that we're using is this turnbuckle here. And this is pretty key because we did have to purchase these, but we're going to hook this turnbuckle. We're going to install it with the turnbuckle completely open. And then after we install the wire, we tighten this down, which keeps tension on the wire, which keeps it from sagging from the weight of the tree. The next thing we need is some nice sturdy wire. Now this is actually repurposed when we installed the cable rail for our deck. It's a 0.32 mil wire, nice and sturdy, and it's definitely not going to bend or break under the weight of the figs. The next thing we did is these clamps, looped the wire over and then clamped it down here. You can use a bolt cutter to do that, or a crimper, so the wire stays nice and tight and doesn't slide. So the next step is we're going to attach the wire to the turnbuckle. The turnbuckle should be in the open position when you're installing the wire, and then run the wire behind the fig tree all the way down to the other end, where we're going to attach it to the turnbuckle on the other T-post. Then we loop the wire through the turnbuckle on the other T-post, leaving a little bit of overlap. Jerry cut it, pushing the other end through the clamp, and then tightening it down. Crimp the clamp. I'll tighten the turnbuckle to create tension on the wire. After I tighten this one, I'll go down to the other T-post. Down at the other end now, we're tightening this so the wire is nice and taut between the fig tree. Just go back and forth between the two T-posts until they're evenly taut. Then repeat this process for the second level. The Espalier fig tree is really starting to take shape now. I'm getting excited. The next step here is to choose the branches that we're going to train laterally across the supports. So what we're going to do is look for a couple of strong branches that are coming out from the base of the fig tree. We've got a couple right in here. I'm going to choose this one as my first lateral branch to train. But before I do that, we've got to take this one off. Now, I know it's really hard sometimes to prune your plants and prune your trees, especially when this looks like a nice, healthy branch. But we don't want it coming out this way. It's going to get in the way, and it's just not going to be a branch that we're going to be able to train because it's too far down. So I'm going to go ahead and prune it off at the base of the trunk. But this branch is not going to go to waste. That's one of the beautiful things about fig trees, is they propagate very easily. I'm going to use this one to get me a second and maybe even a third fig tree. And we'll save that for another video. So for now, I'm going to set this cutting aside. So now I'm going to attach this lateral branch to my lateral support. And when you're attaching your branches, it's very important that you use a flexible tape. This is my favorite, stretchy tie tape. You do not want to use a wire because it will cut into the branch and it could cut off some of the flow of the nutrients and water that need to go through the plant and damage your plant. So this is perfect, and what I'm going to do is just attach it at a flexible point. I don't want to attach it too far down because this is a harder part of the branch and it could snap it. Remember, we're gradually training this tree, and ideally you want to start when your fig tree is under 1 year old, which this one is, even though I had the cutting going inside the house for a couple of years. Since I transplanted it this year, technically it's a first-year fig tree. So we're just going to loosely tie that. And I'm starting as close to the main trunk as possible to give it the support it needs. And then the stretchy tie tape definitely has plenty of flex. to stretch out as the plant grows. Then we'll very gently bend and shape this branch, and this is what will guide and train the fig tree as it grows. Looking good. We got my first lateral branch attached. Now this is going to be a gradual process of training this tree. So what I'm going to do to make sure we get really good growth on the first branch that I chose is I'm going to trim this branch right here so all the energy goes into the branch that we're training. So just snip that off, and any other little side shoots we might have coming off. It's looking good. Now on the other side, the side that's going out to the right, we don't have a main lateral branch yet. But we do have a really nice little shoot coming out here from the main trunk. So this is the one that I'm going to let grow. Then we'll train this gradually as it grows across this first horizontal support going in the other direction. I have the first level established, a good plan for that. The second level, however, I don't have any main branches or good established branches shooting out from the main trunk. So here's the tough part. I've got to top my tree, because remember, the whole purpose of the Espalier method is to manage the space, grow more fruit in smaller space. So I've got to top it to send more energy into producing additional side branches. Here's the really hard part though. I'm already developing little figs on the top. So I've got to sacrifice those figs for the long-term training of the tree. Oh, I hate to do this, but we're going to go ahead and top it here. This just kills me, you guys. We also don't want a big tree growing into our deck. So we'll top it right here. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that hurt. Gonna set this aside. And what that'll do is encourage more side shoots. But in the meantime, this is kind of leaning over here, so I'm going to install an additional support behind the tree. Now for this support, do not use a T-post or something that's going to dig into the roots of the tree. This is just a cedar pole. I'm going to place it right behind where I want the main branch to kind of grow. It'll help it grow more upright and more sturdy. So basically right behind it. Drive it in with a rubber mallet. And then attach it with some twine to give it that support it needs. And start at the base of the tree. This will help it grow nice and straight. And then continue to attach it with twine all the way up to the top. As the tree grows, I'll continue to monitor the new growth and train it and prune it as needed, pruning off any side shoots or any unruly shoots that I don't want growing in this area. So that's the beauty of the Espalier method. You can train it to the space that you have. As far as ongoing watering of the fig tree, you want it to be moist but not waterlogged. Fig trees don't like to have wet feet, so to speak. So what I'm doing here is I'm hooking into my drip irrigation. Now the fig tree is a little bit raised up here, so it'll have really good drainage to avoid that wet feet problem. You definitely don't want the roots getting rotted. I've got 2 drip lines here I'm tying into. One of them, this is my container drip. Don't want to tie it into that one because it would get too much water. So I'm tying it into another one down here that's on a zone that waters my pollinator garden. So I'm just running a drip hose here to my fig tree. I'm going to circle it around a couple of times. And this is a drip emitter hose that has the emitters built in. The emitters are every 6 inches. Then we're just attaching it to the ground with landscape staples. I'm going to encircle the tree a couple of times with it to ensure adequate watering. And I just fed my fig tree, and I'll feed it again probably in about 6 weeks or so. Typically during the season, you want to feed it at the beginning of the season with your water soluble, add some extra compost to the top of the soil, extra granular fertilizer, and then feed it again about midway through the season so it produces really well. So drip irrigation is a game changer. The emitters built in are super handy. It keeps it nice and flush against the ground. Really takes the guesswork out of watering, as this is also hooked to a timer. And right now, when the weather is really hot, I'm watering about 30 minutes a day. So 100-degree temps, definitely keep it nice and moist. You do not want it to dry out or it could stunt the tree and really affect your production, or your tree could die. The last step, which to me really puts the icing on the cake, is mulch. Now, mulch is super important for fig trees because you don't want them drying out. So it'll really help regulate the soil temperature so they don't get too hot. And for this, I'm using a natural shredded red cedar mulch. You do not want to use those painted wood chip mulches that you find at the garden centers. They're full of all kinds of stuff that'll be bad for your trees and it will soak into your soil. They're painted and they're just not any good. But shredded cedar is perfect. It's a natural wood mulch. It smells. It also naturally repels pests. Now I'm gonna mulch right around the tree and also mulch this entire area. When you're mulching your fig tree, you don't want to mulch right up to the trunk. You want to leave about a 2 to 3 inch diameter around the trunk so you don't smother it. But other than that, spread about 2 to 3 inches of mulch all around the tree and all around the area here. Along with monitoring the growth and continue to train your lateral branches, you're also going to want to keep an eye on the tension of the wire and then make adjustments to the turnbuckle as needed by tightening or loosening. The Espalier method also works well for apples and pears along with fig trees. And by using this method, making great use of the space, growing more fruit in a smaller amount of space that I wouldn't be able to grow, and I've also created a beautiful garden feature. So by following the steps, you can do it too. Fig trees are very easy to grow, especially if you're a beginner. Let me know if you're going to try it. Thanks for watching. See you next time in the garden.